welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 336 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. Going into the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, that is, we knew that the Denver Nuggets was a better overall team than the Phoenix Suns. Especially after that trade, the trade that the Phoenix Suns did to acquire Kevin Durant. We knew the Denver Nuggets were a better team. I mean, they finished number one in the West. They had the two-time MVP. We knew they were a better team. The reason why a lot of people picked the Suns to win is because the Suns have better individual players. Like, you have Kevin Durant, you had Devin Booker. We saw the run Devin Booker went on in this playoffs, but outside of that, there were a lot of questionables, like the health of Chris Paul, like the health of DeAndre Ayton. But a lot of people thought you can ride the talent of a Kevin Durant, of a Devin Booker, to get you past the better team, which is the Denver Nuggets. But what did we get in Game 6? We got for lack of a better term, an ass whooping of epic proportions. The Suns pretty much lost by 25 points. I think it was 125 to like 100. However, they were down by 30 at the half. The game was over pretty much after 5 minutes in the first quarter. Now, when you look at a loss like that, you try not to compound it with everything that we saw in the season, everything that we've seen in the past. You try to look at it for what it is. It's one loss. Now, unfortunately, that loss kicked you out the playoffs, but you don't want to say that it was a failure of a season for the Suns, because I mean, you only had 8 games in the regular season with a fully healthy Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. So let me not say us. The Suns would like to tell themselves that this wasn't a failure of a season because the core didn't play enough games with each other. And like I told multiple people, or like I told on this podcast, going into the playoffs, the playoffs is not a place where you want to build camaraderie, where you want to build habits with your teammates. The playoffs is where you're able to lean on your teammates and lean on the relationship that you have with your teammates. You don't go into the playoffs hoping to build camaraderie and build a flow with your teammates. It just doesn't work. It's because you're playing against teams that already have that flow, that already have that knowledge of what their teammates are going to do. So when you're the Suns, you're playing catch up already. And while yes, that can work against a Clippers team that didn't have a Paul George, didn't have a Kawhi Leonard most of the series, that's not going to work when you have a fully developed team, a team that's been playing with each other for a while, a team that already has a chip on their shoulder, and ultimately the number one seed in the West. So if you're the Suns, that's what you're going to tell yourselves. Or that's what you're going to tell yourselves and make yourself feel better. But let me tell you why a loss like Game 6, losing by 25 at home, why this spells doom for the Suns, and why I feel this iteration of the Suns is over with. I started off by saying you don't want to compound multiple years, or you don't want to compound what you see this year, what you saw in this playoffs, to what you've seen in past playoffs. But you have to when we're talking about this Suns core, or you have to when we're talking about this Suns team. Let's just go back 3 years. And why? And this is I'm going to paint a picture and why I feel next year's Suns are going to look very different than this year's. Let's go back 3 years. 3 years ago, they were in or 2 years ago, they were in the NBA Finals. They had a 2-0 lead in the NBA Finals. They lost 4 straight. They lost the finals to Giannis and the Bucks. Next year, I think they were the number 1 seed, the number 1 seed in the West. A lot of people thought that this was going to be their year, and the only team that you really felt they had to overcome and get over in the West was the Golden State Warriors. So Chris Paul had a career year. Devin Booker had a career year. It was, a lot of people thought that last year was the Suns' year. What happens? You make it to the second round. You go up against a team that you're supposed to be superior than, and that is the Dallas Mavericks. While, yes, Dallas had the best player in Luka Doncic, as we've seen so many times in these playoffs, the best player doesn't ultimately mean you're going to win the game or you're going to win the series. You go up against Dallas, better team, fully healthy, by the way, and you get smacked by 30 in a Game 7 at home. Now we're here. At home, you have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker playing at an all-time historic pace in the playoffs. And you're down 30 points at half. Again, we understand and we know that the Nuggets are a better team. That's why while a lot of people don't want to give the Nuggets credit because maybe they don't watch a lot of Nuggets games or they're not a fan of how Nikola Jokic plays or how he approaches the game. I understand that. The Nuggets are not the flashiest team. In fact, the Nuggets have really no flash to them outside of Jamal Murray. There is not one Nuggets player that would be on a highlight mixtape outside of Jamal Murray at times. But when we talk about structure, when we talk about offensive efficiency, when we talk about assists, when we talk about best players, the Nuggets were the better team. But just because they were the better team, that doesn't mean that the Suns should have went out the way that they went out. And this is why I feel that there's going to be drastic changes. Let me start with the coach. Let me start with Monty Williams. Now, you guys understand, and you guys know me. You know that I'm not one to call for a coach's job, especially a black coach's job. I feel I've always been under the impression that the players play, not the coaches. So the onus should be on the players not performing or the players not executing more than the coaches. But this is why you have to look at the entire story. And this is why you have to go back 3 years or 2 years ago when the Phoenix Suns were in the NBA Finals. Monty Williams suffers from something that I feel a lot of coaches suffer from. And it feels like Monty Williams, you can ask a lot of people. And you can ask when you hear Monty Williams' name and you ask around about him, you hear nothing but glowing reviews about Monty Williams as a person. He's a great person, or he's a good coach, or he's just a personable person. We know about the tragedy that happened with his wife, but Monty Williams is just a good person. But sometimes you have to put aside the personality and look at exactly what we're seeing from Monty Williams. Monty Williams suffers from the same thing that a lot of coaches suffer from. And that, in my opinion, is you're so stuck to a game plan going into a game that you don't make a lot of adjustments. The beauty of a playoff series is you should see multiple adjustments when needed. For instance, I'm going to talk about now. I'm going to do my caveat that I do every single episode. I am recording this Friday afternoon, meaning the Game 6 of the Lakers game and Game 6 of the Miami Heat game I've not happened yet. So I'm gonna give, I guess, a prediction, and of course, when this drops tomorrow, you will know what happened. So I would have to speak very generic when we talk about the Lakers and we talk about the Knicks. But when we look at this Golden State Warriors and Lakers series, at least on the Golden State Warriors side, you're seeing nothing but adjustments. And of course, most of those adjustments are how to guard Anthony Davis, because Anthony Davis is the player that is drastically changing the series, or changed the series for the Lakers. You saw JaMychal Green get a start. You see Gary Payton II get starts. You see Steph Curry play more on ball, because as we know, Steph Curry he thrives whenever he's on the floor, but his best, usually you'll see a Draymond Green carry the ball because of his playmaking ability and because how deadly of a catch and shoot, or how deadly of a player Steph Curry can be when you're running plays for him. But you're seeing nothing but adjustments from the Golden State Warriors, which is why a lot of people have touted Steve Kerr as one of the best coaches now. Again, I don't know. I believe Golden State more than likely is going to lose Game 6, which is, of course, tonight. But that doesn't mean that we're not seeing adjustments. You're seeing adjustments when you need to. Hell, you're even seeing adjustments in minutes. Jordan Poole hasn't really played that well. He's been cut minutes. Steph Curry's playing more minutes because we know the plus minus when he's on the floor and when he's not on the floor. Dante DiVincenzo's getting more minutes. You're seeing adjustments in that series is what I'm saying. When you look at the Suns series in the NBA Finals against Giannis and the Bucks, for some reason he never changed the way that he defended Giannis. For some reason, I understand Giannis is Giannis, and the Bucks or the Suns probably had absolutely nobody on the team that can guard Giannis. But for some reason, he had DeAndre Ayton as the primary defender for Giannis Antetokounmpo. You go back last year against Dallas. For some reason, they never changed the way they guarded Luka Doncic. Never. They just kept sending what the Dallas Mavericks would do is they would put Luka in countless pick and rolls. And for some reason, the Suns continue to switch, where you'll have a lesser defender like a Cam Johnson or like a Chris Paul. You'd have them on a Luka. Barbecue chicken. In this series, the series against the Nuggets, you have Giannis going, you have Nikola Jokic going crazy. Nikola Jokic is destroying DeAndre Ayton and honestly whoever they guard. Whoever guards or whoever's guarding Nikola Jokic. Now, I understand that there's nobody on that team that can really defend Nikola Jokic. No one. As we've seen, DeAndre Ayton is not him. But I don't think there was one time that they threw another look at Nikola Jokic the entire series. Now, you can say that this series changed with Chris Paul not being there and with DeAndre Ayton missing Game 6. But I think if Chris Paul played, not much would have changed. Chris Paul is at a point in his career where he's not really drastically affecting the outcome of a game. Or let me say this. He can still drastically affect the outcome of a game. I don't know if he's at a point of his career where he can drastically affect the outcome of a series. If he can do it multiple games. I think Monty Williams is a great person. I don't know him personally, of course. I've never met him. It just feels like it feels like he is so hell bent on his game plan going into a series or going into a game that he very rarely makes, if ever makes, adjustments, and that doesn't work in a playoff series, as we've seen the last 2 to 3 years in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong, man. The Suns have been one of those teams where they should have been good enough, and they are good enough to win a championship. The Suns rosters for the last few years have been good enough to win an NBA Finals. When your roster's good enough and at that point, when you get to the NBA Finals and when you get deeper into the playoffs, that's when adjustments matter. As we're seeing with Golden State. As we're seeing with Golden State. You know who didn't make adjustments? The Memphis Grizzlies. You see where they are. You know who did make adjustments? The Timberwolves. You see where they are. That's the Monty Williams side of it. Now let's talk about the stars. Let's first talk about Kevin Durant. No, let's not. Let's first talk about Devin Booker, because just yesterday or just 2 days ago, I put out a short praising Devin Booker and the historic run that he was on in the playoffs. I think averaging upwards of 36 points while shooting 61% or 60% or above 60%. And I said that the only recipe, at least this point, that the Suns have to win is Devin Booker have a historic game like he's been, and Devin Booker having an historic game and Kevin Durant coming along and having a great game. Those were the only ways I saw for victory. Those were the only paths I saw that could have at least helped the Suns advance in these playoffs. But as we talk, but like I said, we talked about Monty Williams, and I just heaped an incredible amount of praise on Devin Booker. But I have to be honest about what we've seen from Devin Booker. And I let this historic run cloud what I remember from Devin Booker. And since we're staying in this bubble, right? We're staying in this. In fact, we can go all the way back to the bubble. We can go to the bubble. We can go after the bubble. We can go back to the bubble. We know how great Devin Booker is offensively. We know that he's one of the best guards in the league as far as putting the ball in the hole. But let's go back to the bubble, right? And not just let's every single clutch game where Devin Booker is needed to be big, he hasn't been. To the point where last night, or game 6, Devin Booker had a whopping. Devin Booker, who I said is averaging 36 points, averaging over or shooting over 60%. Devin Booker in a game a game where that he needs to be big and they need his offensive weaponry. He goes 4 for 13, 1 for 3 from the 3-point line, and scores 12 points. 12 points. You can go back last year. In fact, let's do this. You can go back last year and in the playoffs, right? In the game where Game 7 on your home floor, you're the number 1 seed. Again, Game 7 on your home floor. Devin Booker goes, give me a second. Devin Booker goes 3 for 14, 0 for 4 from 3, scores 11 points. You can even go a tad bit further. Let's go 2021. Suns playoffs. Again, I don't know if you're noticing this, but there is a pattern. The NBA Finals. NBA Finals. Let's go to game. Let's go to game 6, right? Game 6, NBA Finals. You're averaging 28 points a game, right? In the NBA Finals. This is 2000. This is the year you're in the finals. Game 6. Devin Booker goes 8 for 22, 0 for 7 from 3, 19 points. What I'm saying is this. We can rain heat or praise Devin Booker all we want, and a lot of it would be justified. Devin Booker is a really good player, but what we're seeing from Devin Booker is it seems like the pressure of big game situations, at least in the playoffs, has gotten to Devin Booker. To the point where you are on a historic run, and in a game deciding where the Nuggets really haven't changed their offensive or their defensive game plan for you, because you still have Kevin Durant on the other side. And you only dropped 20 or 12 points. On top of that, one thing that was a question mark was who was going to be their third option. Because Chris Paul wasn't there, because DeAndre Ayton wasn't going to be there, who was going to be their third option? And you got a 31-point game from Cameron Payne. And you couldn't bring it home. Again, I'm not shocked that the Suns lost this series, especially after like game 1. I kind of understood, and I kind of felt, yeah, Denver is the better team. But to go to lose as embarrassing as you lost the Suns, it's that especially 3 years in a row, in my opinion, 4 years in a row if you go back to the bubble. That spells change has to come. Now let's go to Kevin Durant. People are going to say, well, Kevin Durant, he had 23 points. Kevin Durant was on a new team. You know, all I've heard, and I've said it too, so I'm not gonna be a hypocrite and say I didn't say it. But all I've heard is you can drop Kevin Durant anywhere and the team is going to flourish, or the team is going to be drastically better. And Kevin Durant is one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league. And I saw a comparison, and the comparison was I didn't really think of it until I thought of it. And it's like, wow. The comparison I saw for Kevin Durant was Aaron Rodgers. Now you're thinking to yourself, Aaron Rodgers only has one Super Bowl. Kevin Durant has two NBA championships, two-time Finals MVP, one MVP. But let me tell you, and let me explain to you why that comparison is so good. His entire career, all we've heard about Aaron Rodgers is he is one of the greatest throwers of the football, or could arguably one of the greatest talents the league has ever seen at the quarterback position. His ability to throw, the angles he's able to throw, the spirals, the arm strength. We arguably have never seen a quarterback with the talent and the skill level that Aaron Rodgers has. Even the great Tom Brady. Now, yes, we understand that Tom Brady is the GOAT because of his accomplishments, but Aaron Rodgers is arguably a better talent at the quarterback position. But even with all that, he still has one Super Bowl and only been to one Super Bowl. When we look at Kevin Durant, a lot of people still aren't over the fact that he went to Golden State, and in Golden State, he won two championships. But what do we know about Kevin Durant? Kevin Durant is one of the most gifted basketball players we have ever seen. A 7-foot player that has guard-like skills and one of the best shooters of all time. Yet and still, he only has two championships. And those two championships came alongside Steph Curry, who's the greatest shooter of all time, Klay Thompson, who I believe is the second greatest shooter of all time, Draymond Green, and that team. It didn't work. I mean, Kevin Durant made it to an NBA Finals in OKC, but we know, that didn't. He lost to LeBron James in the Miami Heat, and of course, we know the last season of when he was in OKC, how that ended. Golden State, very successful. We also know how that ended. He went to Brooklyn. We know how that ended, and now he's on the Suns. What I'm saying is, the talent that Aaron Rodgers and the talent that Kevin Durant holds, there is no way that you only have two titles, and both of which came in Golden State, two titles to Kevin Durant's name and one Super Bowl to Aaron Rodgers' name. Especially, again, with the talent that both of them hold. And if you want to talk about today, there's no reason. No way. I understand that everyone has a bad game. Don't get me wrong. I know that. No one can be 100% all the time. No one can be great all the time. LeBron James has bad games. Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, had bad games. Michael Jordan had bad games. Everyone has bad games. But a person as talented as Kevin Durant, there is no way that you go 8 for 19 from the field and you take 0 threes in a game 6. It only finished with 23 points, which you could say, wow, there's some players that never get to 23 points. But for a player with the skill and the caliber that Kevin Durant has, that is a problem. So when you look at Kevin Durant's career, when you look at Aaron Rodgers' career, there is a huge question mark, because it's like, why didn't you win more? I've always wondered that about Kevin Durant. Not the fact of why didn't he win more. I understand how basketball works. Don't get me wrong. I understand. I mean, Damian Lillard is one of the best point guards we've ever seen. He's never been to an NBA Finals. That doesn't take away from the skill set. But one thing I've always wondered about Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant's one of the greatest scorers, if not the greatest scorer of the basketball. And why is he so far? In fact, let me tell you where Kevin Durant is in points. Let me tell you where Kevin Durant is in points. He's 7th. I understand that injuries play a factor, but Kevin Durant, one of the greatest, if not the greatest scorer of the basketball, when we talk about him being 7 feet tall and can shoot over anybody. Kevin Durant has only scored 4,878 points. Let me tell you who is above Kevin Durant. Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. Like, I just don't. Oh, that's the playoffs. I'm sorry, that's the playoffs. Let me go to regular season. Regular season. That was the playoffs. In the regular season, Kevin Durant is 13th. He scored 26,892 points. Do you want to know who's above Kevin Durant in scoring? Hakeem Olajuwon, Moses Malone, Elvin Hayes, Carmelo Anthony, Shaquille O'Neal, Walt Chamberlain, Dirk Nowitzki, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Michael Jordan. I mean, no, not Michael Jordan. I'm sorry, LeBron James. Now, again, I say all this to say this. No one's going to look at Kevin Durant's accomplishments and say it was a failure. And at the end of the day, Kevin Durant could never win a championship again, and I don't think his career would be a failure. But I do think that when you look, Kevin Durant did not win as much as he should have won. Kevin Durant, again, is one of the greatest scorers of all time, if not the greatest scorer of all time. If my life was on the line and I needed a bucket and everyone, of course, was in their prime, to me, it's one. Kevin Durant could be number one or number two. It's 1A and 1B. To me, it's Kevin Durant or Kobe Bryant. But I just feel that there's a level there's a feeling of underachievement when I talk about Kevin Durant. In this game, you're supposed to be the best player on the floor. And that's no offense to Nikola Jokic, but when we talk about individual play, you are the best player on the floor and you get destroyed. I don't know, man. Again, I kind of felt that Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets were the better team. You know, was the best team when we talk about the Suns. What I didn't think was the Suns were going to lose back-to-back years the same way. Which is why I think moving forward that there is going to be major changes. There has to be major changes. I think now you're hearing reports that they're actively going to shop Chris Paul, actively going to shop DeAndre Ayton. I don't know if Monty Williams is going to be there. It's crazy, man. Congratulations to the Denver Nuggets, and this is yet another year where the Suns fail in epic fashion. So let's move forward to another series that is kind of it's perplexing me, and it's perplexing how I'm seeing something from both the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics that I am not liking. First and foremost, the Celtics, the 76ers goes up 3-2, and you have a game 6 at home. Jason Tatum scores 1 point in the first half. I think he misses 13 of his first 14 shots. 1 point at half. And that's something we're going to talk about in a second. But Jason Tatum's first halves in these series in this series has been crazy. You have a lead. You have Joel Embiid. You have James Harden. You have Tyrese Maxey. You have Tobias Harris. And you lose at home because you can't close. And Joel Embiid doesn't touch the ball for the last 4.5 minutes of the game. Doesn't touch, not score. Doesn't touch the ball. In yet another game where James Harden shrinks. There's one team that hasn't shown a glaring weakness this entire playoffs, and that's the Denver Nuggets. They've shown how they could lose. They're not the best defense or defensive team, especially guarding the guard position, as we saw with the Devin Booker crazy numbers until Game 6. But Denver hasn't really shown a huge weakness. Every other team has. And that's even including the Miami Heat. But what I'm seeing let's just stick with the 76ers right now. One, you're depending on two stars. One star, who of course is Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP. But he needs the ball given to him. Because he's a center and because he's the biggest player on the floor, he needs to demand the ball. And if he doesn't, he's not one of those players who can just get the ball and say, move out my way. That just doesn't work. You have to give him the ball. He's a center. And kind of like we talked about with Kevin Durant, it's like when you look at James Harden, you kind of feel the same way. In fact, you feel even more about James Harden. James Harden is one of the greatest scorers of all time. So how is it that he continues? I don't know if people know this. James Harden, I believe, is second all time in 3-pointers made. Passing rate, like he's second all time. He's one of the greatest scorers of all time. Yeah, James Harden is 25th all time in scoring. 25th all time. And to put that in context, the number one 3-point shooter of all time, Steph Curry, is 38th. So James Harden is one of the greatest scorers of all time. It's just when he gets in these, when he's on, he's on. We saw that, we're seeing that in these playoffs. He had a 45-point game. And then had a 40-point game, I believe. But he's also had a couple 17-point games. He's had a couple 10-point games. So outside of them two, and Tyrese Maxey has played good, but Tyrese Maxey he's hit or miss. He's always going to give you energy, don't get me wrong, but when he's off, he's off. And then, of course, and then I have to get to Doc Rivers. And the same problems that I have with Monty Williams, it's times 2 with Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers makes no adjustments. You know what's funny? I had all the faith in the world that the 76ers were not only going to win this series once they went up 3-2, but was going to make it all the way to the NBA Finals. Because when you look at the matchups, I don't think the Knicks nor the Heat can contend with the 76ers. But now you lose a very, very critical game at home. And now you have to go to Boston, which is one of the toughest road environments in sports, and win a Game 7 when you were lucky to win a Game 6 or no Game 5. I have absolutely no faith that the 76ers are going to win now. None. I think they were lucky to win Game 5. And I know the score doesn't look like it, but I don't see it. I don't see a duplicate, because what you should have done was you should have handled business kind of like we'll talk about a little bit with Golden State and the Lakers. You handle business when you have to handle business, because the last thing you want to do is have a favorable hand in cards and play it terribly. The 76ers had a favorable hand. You're up 3-2. You're at home. Jason Tatum is having the worst game of his career. And we're sitting here today. The series is tied 3-3. And going back to Boston. It's crazy. And on the Boston side, they say that, and shouts out to Tim Legler. He explained it a lot further than I'm going to explain it. But they say that times your team embodies the personality of the coach or the personality of the best player. For instance, the Miami Heat, they embody the personality of not only their best player, but their coach, Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler. Tough, rugged. The Knicks embody their coach and their best player, Jalen or Tom Thibodeau and Julius Randle, as we're seeing the inconsistency of the Knicks. The Celtics embody the personality and the I guess you can say the personality of their coach, which is Joe Mazzulla. The problem with that is we're seeing glaring weaknesses out of Mazzulla. Glaring weaknesses. One thing that the coach, all right. Let me tell you the why coaching is so important in the playoffs. Now, in basketball, of course, as we know, the players win games. If you have a LeBron James, if you have a Steph Curry, if you have a Giannis, if you have an Anthony Davis, if you have a Joel Embiid, you're supposed to have a definitive advantage because you have the better player. You have the best player in the series. The best player in the series has won every single series. When we talk about the Nuggets and Timberwolves, who's the best player? Nikola Jokic, he advanced. The Suns and Clippers, who's the best player? Kevin Durant, he advanced. The Kings and Warriors, who's the best player? Steph Curry, he advanced. Grizzlies and Lakers, who's the best player? LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they advanced. The only team, the only one that did not advance that had the best player was the Bucks. That's the only one. Every other series, the best player has advanced. Coaching, and like I talked about with the Golden State Warriors series, and like I talked about with Monty Williams, you're supposed to be able to adjust to what's happening. You have at most 7 games to get it right. And too many times I have seen that, and I talked about this in the short that I just dropped. The Celtics they go through lulls, and if they're not hitting, they're not hitting. Again, Jason Tatum, his first halves in these entire series, or in this series, has been god awful. Now, yes, he did come up clutch in last game's fourth quarter, but I think going into the fourth quarter, he had 5 points. I think he scored 16 in the fourth, but again, he had 5 points. This is your best player. But Mazzulla, there's too many times where he doesn't, late game situations. That's another thing with coaches. You draw up plays and draw up game plans late game situations, he looks lost. He looks in over his head a lot of times. Now, I think ultimately he's going to be a good coach, but in situations like that, that's why the Celtics look god awful in late game situations. When you have Marcus Smart taking the ball or shooting the ball more than you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, when Jaylen Brown can't touch the ball for a good 5 minutes. Like, what are we doing? This series frustrates me so much because I see a pathway to victory for both teams. And when I mean victory, I see a pathway to the NBA Finals and ultimately winning a championship for both teams. But I also see glaring weaknesses that can have both teams remaining in the semifinals. And while, yes, Joel Embiid is the best player, Jason Tatum, he hasn't been consistent. And again, we talk about legacy talk, the same thing that we're seeing from James Harden. Inconsistency in big moments. So think about this. And this is the biggest indictment on the 76ers. Do you have any faith outside of Philly fans? Do you have any faith that they're going to upset the Boston Celtics at home? And on top of that, do you have any faith that James Harden is going to have a big game in a Game 7 on the road? Me neither. Again, I'll be brief because I don't know the outcome of this game, which is, of course, tonight. And that is the Golden State Warriors and Lakers series. I think that the Lakers understand, and Golden State understands as well, that this is the Lakers' Game 7. The Lakers were up 3-1. Golden State won in decisive fashion in Game 6. Oh no, Game 5. The Lakers understand that this is their Game 7. Because that's what you've been hearing all week. When you're playing against a champion, you have to knock them out. You have to finish them. And the last thing you want to do, the last thing anybody wants to do is which is one of the biggest reasons, one of the biggest problems I have with the 76ers, is you do not want to give the better team life. Golden State is hanging on by a thread. A thread. And that thread will turn into a seismic rope if they win Game 6. You're talking about a Golden State that has struggled on the road all year. If they win Game 6, that will be their 14th win on the road all year. And one thing that we know about basketball is role players play better at home. So you need a big game from D'Angelo Russell. You need a big game from Austin Reeves. You need, or at least one of them, Dennis Schroeder, Jared Vanderbilt, Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker, I think, had 4 points last game. So again, I'm not gonna sit and talk about it a lot because it's already happened at this point. But the Lakers understand. They have to understand that this is their Game 7. And I say that because if you don't win at home, imagine the confidence boost that gives the Golden State Warriors having a Game 7 at home against a team that they, at this point, have beaten 2 times in a row, one of which at home. And if you look, outside of the 2 blowouts, this series has been close. I think that the Lakers understand, especially with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and nobody on the Golden State Warriors can defend Anthony Davis, as we've seen this entire series. I think that my prediction is the Lakers are going to win. but they need to win. And I understand that this series has gone eerily similar to the Memphis Grizzlies and Lakers series. However, Golden State is not Memphis. Now, again, I think that the Lakers are going to win, so this is all, But if they don't, boy, if they don't. And the same goes for the Heat. I have more faith in the Heat than I do with the Lakers if the Heat lose. But the last thing the Heat want to do is go back to New York for Game 7. That's the last thing you want to do. I think the Heat are a better team, or have been the better team this entire series. But again, the last thing you want to do is give an opponent the life and momentum. That is a momentum swing. That's one thing that we saw. Since you want to talk about it, that's one thing that we saw in 2016, the NBA Finals, Golden State and Cleveland. Cleveland won because of three reasons. They won because Draymond Green got suspended. Bogut got hurt and he was out for the rest of the series. And with those two incidents happening, all the momentum shifted to the Lakers. To Cleveland and LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. Momentum is a dangerous thing to lose. And I think right now, even though they did lose the last game, the momentum and the pressure is on the home teams, the Lakers and the Heat. Close it out, because the last thing you want to do is give a team that is desperate and give a team that thinks they should be, or thinks that they can beat you, give them a leg up. It's the last thing you want to do. So, again, I'm not staying on it long. I think the Heat are going to win, and I think the Lakers are going to win. So, we'll talk about it. The NFL schedules were released, and it's a big moment because the NFL schedules sort of give a map of how the season could ultimately end up. Not because, of course, the schedule and who they're going to play, but the strength of schedule matters. And who you play, when you play them, where you play them, that matters. Which is why teams and the NFL in general make it a big spectacle that they release the schedule. Shouts out to, the Titans. They had a really clever way of releasing schedule. Shouts out to the Jaguars. They had a really clever way. Shouts out to the Chargers. They had an anime way. It's a big moment for this. It's pretty much hey, we're back. And I'm going to talk about 3 winners, and of course, we're just dissecting the schedule. I'm not going to talk about every single one of them, but we're dissecting 3 winners of the schedule and 3 losers. And when I say losers, the schedule was brutal for these teams. Let's talk about the winners. Let's first talk about, of course, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers find themselves in a position that they haven't been in a while, and that is a position of unknown. You have a new quarterback in Jordan Love. You don't know what you have. Yes, you still have a good team, but the league is a quarterback-driven league, and it doesn't matter how good you are if you don't have the quarterback. There's a cap, i.e., the San Francisco 49ers. And when you're a team that has a lot of question marks at the quarterback position, going into the season, you want as many layups as possible. You want as many, I'm not going to say sure wins, but as many teams where you could win. You want them as much as possible. And one of the biggest reasons why I think the Green Bay Packers was a winner is because when you look, their first game is against a bad Chicago team. And not just bad Chicago team, but a bad defense. You do not want Jordan Love's first few games to be world beaters on the defense. Like you, we'll talk about some teams in a second, but you do not want your new franchise quarterback or possibly your franchise quarterback. You do not want him to go against a death row of defenses, and you don't. I mean, Chicago had one of the worst defenses last year. You play them week 1, week 2, Atlanta. We know their defense is terrible. It gets a little more difficult, but you're playing them at home. You're playing the Saints at home. Now, yes, they have a good defense, but you're playing them at home in the climate and the weather. The Detroit, their defense is still a little suspect. The Raiders, their defense is terrible. The Broncos in week 7, their defense is good, but again, we don't know. The Vikings, the Rams. Like, you're playing the first time you're playing against a real elite defense is probably week 3, but you're playing them at home and week 7. So that really helps for a young quarterback that's getting like the first year where the team is pretty much his. That spells definite win for the Green Bay Packers. Another one is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens had a very loud offseason, of course, with the whole Lamar Jackson deal and everything, but they were able to get it done. So what you want is you want some easy layups. You want some easy layups to start off because you want to get the mojo, you want to get the morale, you want to get the city back to liking the team. Because, of course, with this Lamar Jackson thing, you saw a divide between the team and Lamar Jackson as well as the fans. Well, you get a Houston Texans team, which that should be an easy win. Of course, you have the Bengals, and it's at the Bengals, but that's in a divisional game. We always know how those go. The Colts should be a win. The Browns should be a win. We do want to see what Deshaun Watson looks like with, is he ever going to get back to his prime years? But that should be a win because they've had some flux on the defense side of the ball. Of course, Pittsburgh's always a tough match, but you're playing against Kenny Pickett. And, of course, the Tennessee Titans. Like, they have, from week 6, Tennessee Titans should be easy. Detroit, we're thinking a lot of people are thinking they're going to be really good, which I think they will be, but you still have the best quarterback. The Arizona Cardinals, Seattle Seahawks. So I just think that this shapes up to be a really good season for the Ravens. And I think that when you start off with a cupcake and then you start off with a division rival, which is tough, don't get me wrong, but then you follow it up with the Colts, I think that is a favorable start outside of the Cincinnati Bengals. And then you get Cleveland, but it is at Cleveland, so, And a last win, I would say the Lions. Now, yes, it's tough that you have to start the season with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's tough. At Kansas City on, Thursday Night Football. Ugh, that's tough. Season opener. But out after that, you have the Seahawks, and a lot of people are saying the Seahawks are going to be good. I think they're going to be good, but is the Geno Smith that we saw last year, is that just like an outlier, or is that the new Geno Smith? And the defense, which they did address a lot of the defense, is it going to be good? We don't know. You have Atlanta that should be a cupcake. Again, Green Bay. This is a new age for Green Bay. They have a good team, but the quarterback is still a question mark. The Carolina Panthers, you have a rookie quarterback. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're probably going to be awful this year. So I think that it's when we talk about favorable schedules, there's a bunch of teams that have favorable schedules. I think the Dolphins is a team that had a very favorable schedule. Again, Detroit, Green Bay, the Ravens. I think you can say those are winners as far as the schedule goes for this year. On top of some winners, there are definitely some losers. And let me tell you something. One of the biggest losers of this schedule release was the Giants. Let me tell you their first few games. Dallas On the road at Carolina, on the road at San Francisco, or not Carolina, Arizona, on the road at San Francisco. You play the Seahawks. Then you're on the road at the Dolphins, on the road at the Bills. Then you got Washington. Then you got the Jets. Like, weeks out, the only cupcake, I guess you can say, are the Arizona Cardinals. But even that's on the road. So on the road, and then you have a short schedule or a short week because you play that Sunday, then you play Thursday against the San Francisco 49ers. They did the Giants absolutely no breaks. You have Dallas, then man. Again, your hardest games, your toughest games of the season are pretty much on the road. Of course, you have it on the road with Philly. You have on the road with the Saints. You have on the road on the road with the Bills, on the road with the Dolphins, and of course you have the Jets at home with Aaron Rodgers. So, on the road with 49ers. Yeah, no. They did them absolutely no favors. None. Another team they did not do any favors for is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, yes, I can attest, and I do believe that the Philadelphia Eagles won the draft. I think that, getting Jalen Carter, getting Nolan Smith, they did a really good job in the draft, and I think that they were one of the winners of the draft. However, this schedule, man, think about this. From week 6, no, actually, let's go a little further. From week 11, you're at Kansas City, then you're at Kansas City, short week because you play on that Monday, then you play Sunday. You're at the Bills. I'm sorry. At Kansas City, then you play the Bills, and you play the 49ers, and you play the Cowboys, and you play the Seahawks. That is a tough. From week 11 to week 15, that is tough. And then even week 16, well, yes, I think they're definitively better than the Giants. It's still a divisional matchup. So that is a tough. On top of that, actually, you can even start with week 4. Week 4, you're at the Commanders, divisional. Then you at the Rams. We don't really think much of them. Week 6, you have Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and you have Tua and the Dolphins. You have Commanders again. You have Dallas. Then you have to bye, and then week 11, the Saints row. Like, that is tough. It's going against the defending champs. Then the Bills, a lot of people have had them winning the Super Bowl last year. The 49ers, arguably the best defense in the league. Then the Cowboys, and you got the Cowboys late at Jerry World. It's going to be tough, bro. That is a tough slate of games for the Eagles. Now, I think the Eagles are going to be very good this year, don't get me wrong, but they didn't do them any favors. And lastly, I'm going to talk about is the Jets. The Jets, again, new team, or let me say, new quarterback, trying to get acclimated with the team. The first week, you play the Bills. Second week, you're at Jerry World. Fourth week, you're in Kansas City. You play Kansas City. Fifth week, you're in Denver. Then you play the Eagles. Week down, you play the Chargers. Then week 11, you're at Bills, and then you follow that back up with a quick or a short week, and you play the Dolphins. Yeah, man. When you have a new quarterback, that's tough. That your first game at home is going to be the Bills, and then at Jerry World, and then just 2 weeks later, you're playing Kansas City at Denver in the high altitude. That's going to be tough. You're really going to see what the Jets are made of very early. Again, man, the schedule release is really fun and really good for a lot of for all the teams, and they make a really big spectacle of it, which is really good. But some people have favorable schedules and some people do not. So, yeah. I have been doing Uh, I have been, I guess you can say, celebrating the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Every episode, I've been highlighting a different person from that community. In this episode, I wanted to look at Troy Polamalu. When you talk about the safety position and you talk about greatness at that position, there's really only two names that come up, and that is Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu. Now, yes, there have been great safeties throughout, but those are the two names that are get talked about when we talk about the greatest safeties ever. And Troy Polamalu, he has a lengthy rap sheet. No, let me not say rap sheet. He has a lengthy accolade sheet. I mean, you have 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's a defensive player of the year, 4-time all first team all pro, 2-time second team all pro, 6-time all pro, or 8-time all pro or pro bowler. He made the 2000s decades team. He is in the Hall of Honor for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Pittsburgh All Team, and I think he's a Hall of Famer. Troy Polamalu is when we think about the toughness and we think about Pittsburgh Steelers and what they represent and what they stand for. Troy Polamalu is a perfect face for that organization and perfect face for the embodiment of what the Steelers are. He, alongside Ed Reed, really transformed and made the safety a household name as far as position. The way that the physicality that he brought to the position, as well as Ed Reed. And that's another thing. When we thought of strong safeties, you didn't really think of, hard hitting. You thought of speedsters and someone that can clear coverage or clear distances, and you didn't think of sheer hitting and force and strength. Well, that's what you got when you talked about Troy Polamalu. We know the famous play, the special teams play where he jumped over the line to get the block, and we know about the incredible interceptions that he had. He's one of the greatest USC Trojans we've ever had too. So I wanted to highlight Troy Polamalu for the Asian American Pacific Islanders Heritage Month for this episode. So shouts out to Troy Polamalu. And there you have it. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. So get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to if you're listening. Please subscribe to if you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. And until next time, much love.